Hello and welcome to the British Sitcom History Podcast. I'm Gareth, and with me, as always, is Alan.
Hello.
And if you were watching on video, you will have seen our slightly amended titles there. And at the end, we had three old men going down a hill on a go-kart. So we must be covering Last of the Summer Wine.
Yes, indeed we are. Yes, but not That's a big job, Gareth. How long have we got?
It's a big undertaking. Last of the Summer Wine famously is the longest-running sitcom in the world. Is it in the world or just in British history? So we obviously can't cover all of that in one go. So the first bite-sized chunk that we're going to cover today are the first two series. We're calling them the Blamire years. Why are the Blamire years, Alan?
So the original cast. There's a sort of a trio of old men in the show, and the original cast included Michael Bates as Cyril Blamire, and yes, he had to leave after the second series. We'll go into all that later. But so the first two series is the starting point of Last of Summer Wine. It seemed a nice
blessedly,
chunk.
we only had to watch 14 episodes of this. So there's a pilot episode, and then they made six episodes. And then was it 6 or 7 in the second series?
7 in the second series, yeah.
Yeah. So we watched 14 episodes, which was still quite a trial, to be honest.
14 down, 281 to go.
I'll tell you what, though. It's interesting because I'm going to put my hand on my heart. I've never watched an episode of Last of the Summer Wine. I've never actually seen it.
Never knowingly.
It's been an ever present in my life. I mean, it started 2 years before I was born, but I'm pretty confident I've never watched a whole episode the whole way through.
You must have on a Sunday evening sometime.
Well, let's talk about that because the Sunday evening thing is a real. Like, I don't know if you can relate to this, and I don't know if our listeners can relate to this, but there are certain shows, and Last of the Summer Wine is definitely one of them, where I get this sort of, I hear the music and I get this Proustian rush of anxiety because, oh my God, it's school tomorrow. Oh my God, I haven't done my homework yet. So there are certain Sunday evening shows where I hear them. Can you relate to that? Is that just me?
I don't have a specific kind of like, oh, it's that show that does it. Oh, it's the Antiques Roadshow that always gets me. But I know
there's another one.
I know kind of what you mean.
I've written down that I came up with 4 shows. And I actually went on YouTube and listened to the music, and they all gave me anxiety. One was Last of the Summer Wine, one was Antiques Roadshow, one ever present Songs of Praise. Oh my God! And then the fourth one is one that I think is just because of my age, The Clothes Show. I bet you don't even remember The Clothes Show. The music to that gave me anxiety too. I bet you our listeners can relate to that. They might have slightly different triggers,
sure.
But for me, Last of the Summer Wine is going to be universal.
Okay, so what if I do this to you?
Oh God.
So yes, just to trigger you there, Gareth. A little example of the theme. Iconic.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? There's no. If I take my personal experience out of it, it is an odd little tune, isn't it? It's sort of very plaintive. What is that? Is that strings? I don't really know music. How is that being produced?
I hadn't really thought. Oh, it's a harmonica.
Oh, of course it is. All right, yeah, that makes sense. But it's very sort of laconic, plaintive. It's a sad little tune.
It's not a comedy.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of slow and plodding, which is perhaps.
And interestingly, we won't get into our episode just yet there, but there's not really titles as such, is it? It's the music playing over our 3 heroes just wandering around home first.
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah. Which is it's got a I mean, this is Ronnie Hazelhurst theme tune. For anyone who doesn't know, Ronnie Hazelhurst kind of has done most of the theme tunes that you think of from the 70s BBC stuff. And he always seemed to find a way to, find the vibe of the show. Which it does. It's this sort of
which is quite impressive. It's very impressive when you think
hills.
He's producing the music before the show's been filmed. So yeah. I'll tell you what. We're jumping ahead. So the episode that we are going to cover today is Series 1, Episode 2, and it glories under the name "Inventor of the 40-Foot Ferret" or "Compo Goes to Church." But we'll come back to that in a second. Let's just talk a little bit about how Last of the Summer Wine came about, the provenance of it. What can you tell me?
Sure. Well, the writer, of course, is Roy Clark. He wrote every episode, over its full history.
Very difficult. I mean, credit to him. How do you stay original for all that time when you're just writing it on your own?
Are you being sarcastic, Gareth?
I am being sarcastic, Alan.
So we here on the British Sitcom History Podcast, we have dealt with Roy Clark before because we covered last year or the year before, we covered Keeping Up Appearances.
Yeah.
Another classic sitcom of his.
Another classic that was
later.
Basically the same every week.
Yeah, one of our major complaints about it, as much as it's kind of an easy watch, when you're watching all of the episodes kind of back to back, it's very formulaic, let's say, rather than repetitive. Yeah. It's got its kind of standard procedures.
And I think, as we always do, we have to acknowledge that it wasn't designed to someone to watch 14 episodes in a row.
Yeah.
Sitcoms weren't designed that way.
Yeah, that's okay. And now, Roy Clark, so we did talk about him on our Keeping Up Appearances episodes. I don't think we're going into too much detail here. I want to talk specifically about Last of the Summer Wine, and not least because we're going to talk about him again in the future. Roy Clark, is a prolific writer and has been, prolific being the word. He churns it out, and I sort of use that pointedly because I think he is I get the impression from Roy Clark, he's a bit of a workhorse. It's just like, you sit down, you write, you produce the material. It's not, and I get it. I respect it. But that's the mentality you have if you're going to turn out 295 episodes of the same show. But he also did Open All Hours, Keeping Up Appearances, several other things. He had a good few hits, the envy of any sitcom writer should be. Anyway, he was not originally a comedy writer, particularly. He got into writing and was more interested in drama. But then in the early 70s, he made a show called The Misfit with Ronald Fraser.
Mm-hmm.
And Duncan Wood, who was the head of BBC Comedy, and Duncan Wood, I mean, a huge name in BBC Comedy in those early years, the 60s and 70s. He saw The Misfits and went to Roy Clark and said, you can write comedy. Write me a sitcom. Give me something with 3 old men in it. And now the way Roy Clark tells this story is like, that is the brief I got. Something about 3 old men. That's what he got given. Like, that was the full brief. And it was to create a pilot that went, ultimately, it went into the Comedy Playhouse series. We've seen, Steptoe and Son started as part of that. So, just in terms of the genesis of Last of the Summer Wine specifically, we have that pilot episode, which is essentially episode 1 of the series. It's not hugely different from the first series that we get. Really. Same cast and everything, all that kind of stuff. So he was only in his early 40s at the time, Roy Clark. So he was just like, oh, well, right, old man, I don't know. What am I going to do about this? And kind of was like, and ahed about it. Wasn't sure if he was going to pull it off. And then the way he cracked it was he realized he needed to remove all responsibility from them. So they haven't got jobs, they've got no wives, they've got no kids. They've basically got nothing to do. And that's the hook. They're just these kind of the redundant old men who are wandering about. And he doesn't know what it's like to be an old man at this point. So how do you write that? And his way to get into that was basically, I'm going to write them as if they're just some boys. And if you watch this show in the context of these are 12-year-old boys, 13-year-old boys on summer holiday, that is what this show is.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that, Alan, but I'm nodding my head along as you're talking. That is exactly how it reads.
And it actually contextualizes it really nicely, I think, because because it's not kind of very self-consciously that, but it means it's got that energy. And so you have these old men, but they're just bumbling around playing and kind of, even like their ideas of relationships and women and sex, it's quite kind of like 13-year-olds discovering that stuff. As you're talking,
I'm mapping our 3 characters onto the 3 boys in Please Sir. You've got the sort of one who's in charge of the authority figure. You've got the one who messes about and is a bullshitter. And then you've got the one who's kind of a little bit in his own world philosopher. It's exactly the same. They map across perfectly.
The cast about the same age, are exactly the same age. But yeah, so I think when you've got that in your head, it kind of contextualizes this in a slightly different way, and it's really interesting. And it is going to be fascinating as it goes along. I don't know how it might take us as many years to get through Last of the Summer Wine as they did to make it. Because we're going to break it up into chunks, but it'll be interesting to see how that develops. For today, we're going to focus on the early years and not really reference what it becomes later. We're kind of try and see what it was at its.
Well, God's honest truth, Alan, is I don't really know what it became later. Like, I've got the three blokes running down the hill in a bath. Like, that's the stereotype of Last of the Summer Wine. But again, never really seen it. So this was a bit of a new adventure for me, and I'm not comparing it to later episodes. I haven't seen them.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, let's stick with that.
All right.
Let's jump into the episode, are you?
Well, the setup is we've got these three, funnily enough, I've written in my notes, middle-aged blokes, we'll come back to that, who are all lonely, out of work. Blamire, Michael Bates' character, is recently retired, I think. He's a bit full of himself. Compo is a complete scruff. That's Bill Owen's character. Whereas Clegg, I think he's a widower, isn't he? And he's retired, and he's a bit of a sort of barroom philosopher. So we are basically following them three around. There's some shenanigans in the library. There's the couple of librarians who seem to be having an affair. There's the shenanigans in the cafe where the husband and wife who run it hate each other. We'll come back to that too. And that's it. Like, there's no real plot.
Pretty much.
We're just hanging out with these, now you've said it, it's in my head, these kids. We're just hanging out with these old geezers and listening to them ramble on. And we kind of open up with them walking around. We see them walking across the hills. We see them walking to the church. We can hear them talking. It's like overdubbed dialogue that, we're meant to believe we've got microphones placed everywhere. And they go into the church and Compo legs it. He comes running out as if there's a fire or he's seen a ghost or something. And that's kind of the setup for what I'm going to loosely call the plot of the episode.
Yes, this episode is a exploration of religion, but not really.
Oh, sure. Sure, it's an exploration.
On its surface, it's about religion and faith and that sort of thing, but it doesn't say anything about that.
If you can imagine listening to, if you're stuck on a bus and your headphones aren't working, and so you've got to listen to these three old geezers behind you talking about religion. That's what this episode is. And then the next scene is we cut to the library. So let's talk about the library.
So the library, one of our major sets of the first series, and there's a kind of a vestibule and then the reading room where our boys sit and chat to each other. Yeah, they go in there and they read the papers. Like, there's no internet. There's no kind of, they live in Home Firth, there's not a lot to do. So you go to the library and you read the papers and you talk about stuff you've seen in the papers. It's just a different world.
The plot point here is that the librarians are clearly having an affair. So we've got Mr. Wainwright, who's the librarian, is a odd pinch-faced man, isn't he, with a bow tie and glasses, a very peculiar looking fella.
Colonel Sanders fake beard on.
Yeah. And then what's the name? What's the character's name? The woman, Mrs. something. Partridge. I can't remember. It makes me laugh because they call each other Mr. Wainwright and Mrs. Partridge, even though they're involved in carnal pleasure. So I enjoyed that. But yeah, I think he's a really interesting character because he thinks he's the librarian. He's intellectual. He thinks he's kind of above the rest of the hoi polloi. He's a bibliophile. He's all learned. He refers to Home Firth as this petty bourgeois town. But, like many political ideologues before him, I think he's a bit full of himself and he's probably just saying it to get his end away.
Well, shall we see a clip? Let's have a look.
Go on.
I think I found you in this petty bourgeois town.
There we go.
You're a lovely, wild thing.
Oh, I don't know.
That body was made for pleasure.
Well, I used to enjoy a slow foxtrot. But now he never takes me anywhere.
Carnal pleasure.
Oh, and he never says anything cheeky like that. He hasn't got your gift for words, Mr. Wainwright.
I love the way he thinks he's embarked on this clandestine secret affair. He's sort of glorying it into some literary way in his head, whereas she's just got a rubbish husband and she's enjoying a bit of side nookie.
Yeah, Okay, so these characters, the little clip we just saw there, that's basically what we get from them.
Yeah,
and there's
that's
like,
what we get. That's it.
Where, the boys chance upon them in a car together, and it's like, oh, they've been up to something, but and they use that. There is a conflict that the librarian doesn't want these old smelly men hanging about in his library because they just, they smoke in the room and they eat their sandwiches in the room and stuff. And they're onto
him. And they're onto him. They're onto him. They know that they're having a bit of nookie.
Which is why he can't really throw them out for good. They always get back in because he has to play. But everybody knows about this affair. It's very not very illicit. So. Just quickly on the actors there, Blake Butler as Mr. Wainwright. Rosemary Martin as Mrs. Partridge. To be fair, just kind of those sort of out there working actors who have been in like one episode of everything. Certainly Butler in the 60s and 70s, his sitcom credits are just one episode of this, one episode of that, and not just comedy either. And then Rosemary Martin, similar, worked a lot later in life as well. But just the one notable thing that popped out at me that was Blake Butler was a regular character in Turnbull's Finest Half Hour, which was the early series, just a couple of years before this. Well, the interesting thing about it is that it was a starring vehicle for Michael Bates. Michael Bates plays the titular Turnbull. It did one series. It wasn't a big success or anything, but interesting that they'd worked together before. That was one of Butler's more regular roles. But in terms of the characters, we have these librarians. I think they don't work for what it's worth, and I'll tell you why. The level that we're working on with these two characters, the comedic level, is totally different to the tone of the rest of the show. It feels like they're from a different show.
Yeah.
And
go on, finish your point.
And also,
before I disagree with
you, they are too separated from the actual action. Like what's going on with them is its own thing. It's not related to what we're dealing with. Yeah, so it feels just like, oh, let's drop a sketch in here. Yes. So that is why it never quite tallies. And I'm obviously not the only one who thinks that because they dropped these characters for the second series.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about the second series in a minute, but I get your point. I don't disagree with you, but I quite like them because it's like broad sitcom comedy. It's two people having an illicit affair and trying not to get caught, and it's a little bit naughty. It's classic sitcom fodder, which you're right. It doesn't fit with the main three characters. But I didn't like the main three characters. So actually this was a nice bit of comic relief for me. It was a nice, I preferred it, So I'm not really disagreeing that it's they don't quite match, but for me, that's not a problem.
Well, let me, I tell you what, we're going to talk about Sid and Ivy, who are the cafe patrons. We're going to talk about them later when we come to them in the episode. But just remember that, because I want to compare them to Sid and Ivy in terms of how those characters do work within the world.
I'll tell you what we could talk about while we're in the library, because we're not going to look at Series 2 in detail. You said they dropped these two for Series 2. So they are replaced, aren't they? Tell us about how they replaced them.
So, yeah, and I think this is fine. This is a show in progress. They do the first series, okay, what's working, what's not quite working. And so they obviously decide to drop those characters. Although I will say that Blake Butler comes back as the librarian in Series 3 for a couple of episodes with a new woman in tow. But again, it kind of comes to... Yeah, but they obviously just let's try that. And as they go on later, like the library becomes less important as a kind of a focal point. So
Series 3 is a bit early to be running out of ideas and repeating things.
Well, what about Series 31?
Sorry, go on. Series 2 librarians. What do they?
So the Series 2 librarians, they've gone for something a little bit different, perhaps something a little bit more culturally relevant in 1975, which is when it came out. Let's have a look at those characters now.
This is the Age of Liberation, Jones. What is it?
The Age of Liberation, Miss Probert?
A few years ago, you'd been the slave of some male.
Do you really think so, Miss Probert?
Definitely. You'd have been nothing more than a sexual object.
How fortunate to have escaped such a humiliation.
That's a good delivery. That's a really good line delivery.
Yeah, that actor, the second actor there, is Janet Davis, who is like has been around the world in sitcoms, and she's probably best known because she was Pike's mum in Dad's Army. That's kind of her most notable presence, but was around for a long time. And the first librarian there,
I recognise her face, but I couldn't place from where.
Well, she's called June Watson, and there was nothing that I specifically went, oh yeah, that's her. But she is, her most recent credit was in an episode of Only Child in 2024, when she would have been 90. Yeah. So she's still alive. I think she's the only person we're going to talk about today who's still alive.
This is 50
apart
years
from
ago.
Roy Clark.
This first series, well, this is the second series, but the first series was 53 years ago as we're recording. It's a long time ago, isn't it?
Roy Clark is still alive as of recording. He just got a knighthood this year.
Wow.
And so he was doing the rounds, like doing interviews and stuff, and he seems very for a 95-year-old, he seems perfectly well aware and compos mentis, and I think he would very happily write Last of the Summer Wine if you let him.
Yeah, I'm sure he would. I mean, I'm curious to know why they mercifully put it out of its misery, but I guess we'll get to that in a few years. This is interesting. So the series 2 librarians are lesbians. Like that's the twist, right?
One of them is, and she's got short hair and a waistcoat, so that's clear.
All the signs are there. She's also got a job.
but the other one is not, and so and obviously likes men, and like that's kind of what she's lamenting. But the first is kind of trying to recruit her to the feminist cause, which reads as lesbian cause somehow. But it was the 70s, okay. But feminism and kind of the women's liberation gets kind of dropped quite a lot. In this show, in the first couple of series, it was of the moment. It was kind of culturally relevant, and that's great. And
women's lib, as they called it then.
Yeah, and because we're coming from a very male perspective, and our older male characters are very much like, well, I'm all for this women's lib, but we're different to them, aren't we? We don't know how to make a 3-course meal. It's kind of. That's it, really. And our male characters are without women, and it's kind of that is an important part of their identities.
I've got library gear here. Like it's 1970s, and we've got 2 sets of librarians here. And the first librarian is a Marxist. He actually says he's a Marxist. The second librarian is a lesbian. Both of those things, lesbian in 1973 was coded left wing, and so. If I said to you, libraries are socialist institutions, discuss. Like, would you agree?
Yeah, you're giving things to the people for free,
like free at the point of use. Free at the point of use, paid for by the community. Absolutely, yeah. I think, we don't use libraries anymore. Like, we don't really go to the library. They are dying on their asses, and that's because we now have the internet. But it is another form of democratizing knowledge, democratizing information. I'm going to go back to the printing press. The printing press changed everything. But even after that, okay, you could buy a book, but you had to buy it. So for most people, learning was still not accessible. So libraries originally were private book collections, or maybe like universities would have libraries, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So it was in 1850. In 1850 was the Public Libraries Act. And it was, so I was looking at the MPs who sponsored this. This was before the Labour Party, so they weren't Labour MPs, but this is great if you want coded left wing. So Joseph Brotherton, now he was Salford's first MP, and according to Wikipedia, he was the first vegetarian MP. Say no more. and then the other MP that championed this Public Libraries Act 1850 was a guy called William Ewart. Now, interestingly, not really relevant, but William Ewart was the guy who came up with the scheme for blue plaques that we see everywhere. So that's a bit of legacy for him. But he also, as well as the Public Libraries Act, he championed a bill to outlaw the hanging of prisoners in chains. So total bedwetter, completely.
Oh my God!
So that's the sort of lefty we're talking about. So they brought this act in, and what it meant was local councils could they could raise tax specifically to build these public libraries. And we've still got, like I was talking about Leeds Library earlier. Leeds Library is a beautiful building. We see these in place all across the country because they were paid for in the second half of the 19th century by the industrial income and taxes from in these great northern towns, you know.
Well, interestingly, my local library in Brixton is the Tate Library, paid for by Henry Tate, sugar magnate.
Okay, so you have preempted my next point, which was, much as I would love this to be a purely socialist parable, the project did get a huge boost from private investment. And yeah, Tate was a perfect example of one of those Victorian philanthropists. Another one was probably in the library world, Andrew Carnegie, who was like the Elon Musk of his day. He was a Scottish industrialist, dealt in steel primarily, but gone to America, and he was the richest man in the world. And so he put a load of money into libraries. He was big on upward mobility, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, all that sort of thing. And so he put a load of private money alongside that public money into libraries, and that was a huge part of the growth in the second half of the 19th century. But there is a real socialist principle there. It's publicly funded, free at the point of view, just like the NHS, just like public education. All of these things that were emerging as working class consciousness emerged, if that's not too bad.
Yeah, and all that leads us to having lefty librarians in the 1970s.
Exactly. Yeah. So it wouldn't have been unusual. Like if you're in a post-industrial village in Yorkshire and you want to spot either a Marxist or a lesbian, go to the library. Like that's where they're going to hang out. That's where they're going to be.
God, those intellectuals.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that people watching this in 1973 or 1974 would have got that. They would have recognized that.
Well, where does that drop with our characters here then? Because in terms of their sort of political leanings, they are quite disparate.
Yeah, and this is a thing, isn't it? Like this is our odd thruple type problem, in that we've got Blamire, who's ex-army, very upright, code's upper class. He's not upper class, but he likes to think of himself, and certainly relative to the other two, he is. He's explicitly he's a conservative. That's how he's. We talk about that. Then you've got Compo, Bill Owen, who's basically has been on the welfare his whole life. I don't think he's ever had a proper job. He's a sponger. And so, like, he's there at the other extreme. And then we've got Clegg in the middle, who's middle class. Did he say he used to work for the co-op? Is that what he used to do before he got made redundant?
Yeah, just little drops of things. He kind of worked in kind of administrative positions in kind of as a clerk and stuff like that. Middle class.
Yeah.
Very Richard Briers.
Yeah, so there's like... we've definitely got this sort of 3-tier system, haven't we?
Well, it's a classic thing. He is upper class. I look up to him kind of vibe. And it's interesting because it has that overall vibe, but it's a little bit more nuanced, like you're saying. Blamire is not upper class, but he is aspiring upper class. He's a snob. And just to relate to Roy Clark, keeping up appearances, he writes that very well, that kind of aspiring snobbishness. And it does allow for that flow of class within our three main members, but as we see a lot, Blamire and Compo grew up on the same street and they were at school together, and that's the beauty of it, and it just allows whenever Blamire is talking about his position or standing or whatever, Compo can always just prick his pomposity by going, you still are dripping sandwiches same as everyone else.
He's Daisy, isn't he? He's Daisy and Rose. And you Hyacinth when she was not.
Exactly, yeah. So it's a really nice. I think it's a really nice interplay between them. There's a real friction between those two characters, and then you got Norman Clegg, just kind of in the middle. He's the one holding them together. Although interestingly enough, there is an episode in series 2, where Compo disappears for reasons we don't need to get into right now, but he's not there, and so Blamire and Clegg are left just on their own, and they're just like they're bored.
They got nothing to talk about.
Blamire wants to talk about how the trade unions are destroying the country, and Clegg wants to talk about like how free will is affected by the existence of an interventionist God. And without Compo there to just go, oh, let's go and roll down the hill.
I think it's an interesting. You're right. I actually made some notes on that as well because the conceit that Roy Clark is saying is we need all three of them. I disagree. I agree that we need Compo, but I think Clegg is completely redundant. If you'll forgive the pun, he's redundant. But I said earlier it's an odd throuple. I don't think it is. I think this is a classic odd couple with Blamire and Compo, and I'm not sure. Like if Clegg wasn't there, I think this would work as well. I don't really like the character, but it's not. I don't mean that. I just mean the dynamic would work without him.
Yeah, but is he there to soften that, to kind of, and to bring another level into that, to make it more complex? Because he's the philosopher, right? He's the one who's actually putting intellectual thought, such as it is, into like, why are we here? What are we doing?
It's tedious, isn't it? Oh my God.
Well, I think the problem is that, like in this episode, we're looking at specifically, we're really talking about God and faith, religion, but very much in the context of Christian religion. And it's the problem is just it says nothing. It's the sort of thing a 13-year-old would say about philosophy, and
exactly.
It's not
That's
actually
exactly it. It feels like being at a teenage party and being stuck with a boy. He's going to get a guitar out in a minute.
So I think that's the problem. It kind of never really develops into anything, but I think it adds that energy of he'll just drop in a non sequitur. It'll kind of it's almost like he's having his own conversation in his head, and he's sort of slightly flighty with it. And it'll be interesting to see how that develops, and especially as the characters around him change. But yeah, but what I tell you what, let me just drop a little clip in here to sort of demonstrate what brings them together. This line really summed it up for me.
Must you be scruffy and convivial? Have you no inclination for separate tables?
All right.
Sit down, Compo.
We're all together. The camaraderie of the aging redundant cuts across all social classes.
Have you seen him eat a meat pie? Hey, give us a faggot, I'll give you a flash of me gums.
But that scene was not. I just like that scene because
that is a nice example, because if you can see the still that we've got on screen now is Blamire sort of literally turning his nose up and thinking, oh my God, this disgusting little man, and Compo has just sort of pulled a face, deliberately winding Blamire up, and that's their relationship. That's the vibe, isn't it?
Yeah, but I liked it. I liked that phrase, the camaraderie of the redundant, man or whatever it was. But like it's like the point being, they've all basically come from the same place. They grew up in Holmfirth, and they've all ended up in the same place.
Yeah,
but they're so different, and they think they're totally different to each other. But it's just aspirational. Blamire's mum, decided they were going to make him posher, and he went to, he ended up in a military career, and so he's got this kind of pomposity to him, a very Captain Peacock type.
I thought, Captain Peacock's a good comparison actually. So junior officer, bit full of himself, and carrying it into Civvy Street afterwards.
Hello, I am here to interrupt this episode to plug our Patreon. Yes, that's right. But we put a lot of time and effort into this podcast, and we do it because we love it. But if you love it as well, you can now support us financially. Ooh, yes. Just go to patreon.com/BritCompod, and there's several different tiers with different benefits, but basically, for £5 a month, you can support us and help us produce more content. And that means you get access to a members-only episode every month. That's right, every month there will be 3 of the normal episodes free to everyone and 1 members-only. And if you can't afford it right now, fair enough, but you can like and subscribe. Oh, here's the best thing you can do. Tell a friend. Yes, word of mouth recommendation, absolutely the best thing that you can do to help spread the sitcom love and help us. Thank you very much. I won't bother you anymore. Please go back to the episode.
This is shall we get back to the episode? And because we sort of, I feel like we're jumping around a little bit, but there's a good reason for that. it's all kind of a bit, just all meandering, isn't it? It feels like it's going nowhere, and that would be okay if it went somewhere. But if you think it's going nowhere, you're right. That's the problem with it.
I think, and one of the reasons I really lobbied for this episode was because I think this is the most meandering one of the lot. It really has very little in the way of plot. But series 1 in general is like this. This is the vibe. And even by series 2, we'll talk about this later on in terms of major changes between them. But even by series 2, it had got a little bit more plot driven. And certainly by, as we go later on, it becomes much more like, okay, what antics are our boys getting up to today?
Good.
Whereas the first series really dwells on the sense of, the meandering nature and the directionless nature of these guys' lives. Like, that's the point. That's what's interesting about it. That's what Roy Clark is writing. Dare I say it's almost Beckettian?
Oh, give over. Go on, explain what you mean.
I mostly said it to wind you up, but but in the sense that it's not really about what's happening. It's just an exploration of these guys' relationships and intellects.
And you know what? That can work. Like, it feels like if you were sat in a theatre watching these three blokes on stage, just exploring their shared humanity and their differences, like, that could work, but it doesn't. For me, it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't work.
It's a very delicate line between that and boring. As anyone who's seen a Samuel Beckett play will know. And,
yes.
But I think it's interesting. Well, I think this is interesting because I don't think it's typically what we think of as Roy Clark writing. But if you watch something like Open All Hours, you do have Granville is philosophically, again, it's very much the philosophy of a 13-year-old going like, what am I doing and why am I doing it? It's not sophisticated, I'll say that, but it does feel like that does come through. But that is something you might be able to write 6 episodes of. I don't think you can write 295 episodes of that.
I think you'd struggle to write a 90-minute play and keep me interested.
Sure. Yeah. Which is why it's like, okay, today, they've got a motorbike and sidecar and antics ensue. That's kind of.
Do you know what it reminded me of? And this is a bit unkind because I quite like him. It reminded me of a John Godber play. I quite like John Godber, but this is kind of what he does well, where it's, you've got that one character who's a bit of a loose cannon. You've got the sort of barroom philosopher type character. And it is essentially them ruminating on their northern working class life. That is your classic John Godber play. And I quite like those, but it's hard work. It's hard to do well,
Well, if I may draw another comparison, particularly with the way this first series is filmed and the second, and this goes on actually, but basically there's a lot of location shooting. There's a lot of them wandering the hills and kind of wandering around home first, and then they come into a studio set at the library or whatever. Much more than most sitcoms of this era. And I find that interesting, not least because those filmed elements, those on-location elements, really reminded me of Ken Loach. Ken Loach's work. So Ken Loach probably most famously did Kes in 1969, but did a lot of BBC plays, like TV plays at that time, that sort of time. It was all very kind of working class, mostly Northerners, and they would use even like comedians as kind of and non-actors as kind of the actors. It was very realistic, very kitchen sink kind of stuff, but often with the humor of the community, like those kind of funny people that are in there. That was the. I'm
thinking Brian Glover, a wrestler in Kes. Just being a funny teacher, which was very relatable.
And that's Ken Loach brings levity to kind of balance the often tragic nature of the stuff he's dealing with.
Yeah.
The filmed bits really made me think of that. And I don't necessarily saying it was a conscious thing, but like that's kind of what was going on at the time. Let's go out to the hills and film these old men just walking around and doing stuff, and capture that sort of that post-industrial town that's just kind of is. It was put these beautiful locations as well.
Yeah.
And those moments are not very funny. There is a laugh track on them. Like, obviously, they've shown them to an audience and got the laughs, but there's not a lot of laughs if you actually watch them. But then when they're on set and they're doing the kind of more sitcom-y bits, it's a very true and honest audience response there. You can tell that that's a real thing, and it's a lot more sitcom-y. And I think it's interesting that those two things don't particularly jar. I think they meld together quite nicely.
Yeah, I think Home Firth definitely, a character, isn't it? The settings are beautiful. It's a lovely part of the world. Maybe we'll come back to Home Firth because I've got stuff to tell you about Home Firth because I live quite near Home Firth. I think, like before, because we're saving Michael Bates. We're going to talk about him at some length in the second half of this episode. But perhaps can we just cover off Peter Sallis and Bill Owen, the actors?
Oh yes, of course. So we will have a chance to talk about them again. So, like I said, I think we'll concentrate on Michael Bates today. But quick sort of Peter Sallis. I mean, pretty standard drama school rep actor
listen,
kind of thing.
Peter Sallis is Wallace and Gromit, right? Like that's if you're I'm 50. If you're me or younger, Peter Sallis is Last of the Summer Wine and Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah. That's his legacy, and I mean that's quite a legacy. That's to have two legacies like that is pretty good. The Wallace and Gromit thing is interesting because I think by that point in his career he was doing a lot of voice work. I guess he's just got a nice kind of voice. Yeah. So Nick Park, who made Wallace and Gromit, famously just kind of got in touch with him and said, "Oh, I'm doing this like student film. Do you want to do the voice for it?" And he agreed. And then it didn't come out until like 8 years later. So it was because that's how long it takes to make those bloody films.
How long it takes to move the plasticine around.
Just a tiny amount.
I'm sorry. Just stop. What's that from? I got that reference, but I can't remember what it is.
It's the Fast Show. It's the Fast Show, definitely. Yeah, I can't remember.
All right, sorry. Carry on, back to it. Sorry. Should never explain
the interesting thing that I found with Peter Sallis is he wasn't specifically a comedy actor. He did all sorts of stuff. And interestingly, it's the only role in Last of the Summer Wine that was written specifically with someone in mind. Okay. Roy Clark, as we know, is very hands-off. He writes the script and sends it in, and he doesn't really get involved. But this is early on, and I think he was slightly more involved than he kind of was generally. But he'd worked with Peter Sallis before on a couple of things. And like I said, Roy Clark was more of a drama writer. And I actually went and found something, just to give you a sense. This is a TV show called Spider's Web. I think it's some sort of spy drama made in 1972. Roy Clark wrote it, or certainly some of it, because there's several episodes. And here's Peter Sallis in that show.
Okay.
All you have to do is wear the hat. Just make sure they see you wearing the hat. The woman still cooks. Unless maybe you'd rather do some real cooking in the steel mills of Vorosila Granovich.
Is this an accent? Is that an accent?
But yeah, so that's him doing some sort of Eastern European accent, which perhaps is not very clear. But that's just, I found that because it was a Roy Clark written as well, I found that quite interesting. There was definitely humor to what it was. It was, but it was not a comedy.
Well, I tell you the thing with Peter Sallis, right? I have established, I haven't seen this before, but he is in Last of the Summer Wine in my brain. He's there. That's where he sits.
Sure.
I felt a lot of affection towards Peter Sallis.
Yes.
And I can't tell you why. It must be Wallace and Gromit. I feel like he feels like an avuncular, grandfatherly type figure. And so I was disappointed. Look, I don't like the character of Clegg. I don't think that's any shade on his performance particularly. But I was like, oh.
Yeah, maybe it's a nostalgia thing, the kind of Wallace and Gromit thing. But he just, and like even when he's interviewed, he seems like a lovely chap. He's just, he's very avuncular, as you say, and he seems very non-threatening. He's just a simple kind of charming man. Non-threatening person.
Can I tell you, I did some cursory research and I found a little interesting piece of information. Did you know that Peter Sallis' son had been nominated for an Oscar 3 times?
Well, Crispian Sallis, he's an art director and set decorator. I don't know quite what the distinction between those two jobs is necessarily, but he has been Oscar nominated for Aliens and Gladiator, I think was one of the others.
Aliens, Gladiator, and Driving Miss Daisy.
Classic films. So he's Brock America, obviously.
You Brock America.
Interestingly, Aliens was filmed.
Aliens was made in Britain, wasn't it? Yeah, that's like
so that's how you get in when they come over here and film in Britain. But okay.
Let's get back to. So, have you anything else on Peter Sallis, or should we look at Bill Owen?
Not for now. Yeah, I think that's kind of just to give you a sort of précis of how he ended up in Last of the Summer Wine. But yeah, Bill Owen, again, another actor who did comedy and drama. I think Bill Owen has a real skill for comedy, as we'll see here. But perhaps notable credits were he's in quite a few of the early Carry On films. Which is interesting. He's not one of the names you would automatically go to for the Carry On crew, but he was certainly he's in 4 of the first 6 Carry On films.
Okay, right.
In substantial supporting roles, and I think he was kind of wanted to. They wanted him to be in more of them and become one of the regulars, but he just kind of he ended up doing other stuff, as these things going on. But I've got a clip of him here in Carry On Sergeant, which was the first one. This is him with William Hartnell, who, of course, we talked about with the Army game. So let's have a look at that.
How in the name of Aldershot can it work out?
But I mean, it's got to. Your reputation depends on
My reputation, my foot. What about my 50 quid riding on that lot, eh?
Yeah, that's true. Oh, well, there's only one thing for it. We'll have to chase the living daylights out of them.
No. That's no good. That'd be fatal. Half the mob in the guardroom's no good to me.
Yes, but Sergeant...
Will you have ash?
That's Bill Owen in 1958 or 59, Carry On Sergeant was. So, he's already well into his 40s there. He's not a young man, right? But that's kind of the role he was doing. He was military roles he did a lot of. And I'll tell you what, an interesting thing I found out, and I couldn't, this seems to be true, and I just couldn't quite fathom it, and I sort of investigated to try and is this all correct? But at some point in the 60s he started writing songs and wrote songs for a number of notable kind of people, including Cliff Richard, who of course we talked about. He wrote one song of Cliff Richard's songs in 1968 or something. But it's the reason I just make it. I'm like, when you're reading something on Wikipedia or whatever, and you go, "Is that true?" It seems to be true, but it seems particularly weird because it's like a 5-year period where he.
But was he a musical performer? Was he a singer as well? How unusual.
I don't know. If anybody knows anything kind of more specific about that, I'd be interested to hear it, because it feels very incongruous. But
you feel like it might be a different Bill Owen and it's found its way onto Wikipedia.
It's not. It's definitely him. But I just can't quite. I don't know the details of how he ended up in that place, and then, but then probably moved away from that because he was doing Last of the Summer Wine. You know what I mean? Like maybe he found more success suddenly as an actor, and kind of found that. But he was out there being a working actor, and he was doing lots of stuff. I found another clip of him, just timing wise. I found this interesting because this is him in Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, and he plays Thelma's dad. So he gets pulled in because of the wedding, and then he's in a few episodes. Overall. So let's have a quick look at him. So this is 1973. It's the same year that the first series of Last Summer Wine came out.
Well, you see, I'm very comfortable. I'm a builder. I did very well in the post-war boom. I managed to survive that bad patch, and I'm doing all right now. But I was a brickie before that, and I'm still a brickie at heart. It's Thelma's mother what's got all these fancy ideas.
Dear me.
We only take the telegraph just to impress the newsagent's wife. All airs and gracies.
So,
that's him practicing his Yorkshire accent.
Yeah, I found this particularly interesting because this episode went out, and it must have been filmed between the pilot of Last of the Summer Wine and the first series of Last of the Summer Wine. And this episode of Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads was produced and directed by James Gilbert, who produced and directed the first series and pilot of Last of the Summer Wine. So I don't know if that's a very specific, I've just worked with this guy on this pilot. I liked him. He'll be great for this role. Pull him in.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean...
It's networking, Alan. It's networking.
It's who you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting, he's playing a working class character there. but having him play against the wife, who's kind of this upper class snob. So I thought that was an interesting comparison piece.
Interesting.
Just to praise Bill Owen for a while? I think he has a very special skill, and I'm going to compare it to Wilfred Bramble as Albert Steptoe. Of playing. I mean, they're similar-ish characters and they're quite grotesque, but playing very big, very grotesque and cartoonish, but managing to ground it in some sort of reality so that it doesn't feel like you're watching a stupid comedy performance. That is, you don't agree?
Listen, I like the comparison. I think it's a good comparison, but I think it disfavors Bill Owen, because I think I agree with you. Wilfred Bramble nailed that, but. No, I don't know. Listen, I've watched 6 episodes. So, but for me, it felt too cartoonish. It felt not of this world. And that's all right. Like, that's a choice. But I disagree with you that it felt grounded. It didn't feel grounded to me.
I mean, it is a comedy performance in a comedy world, you know? It's like, but I think there is a level there where you're not thinking I'm watching a silly comedy performance.
I mean, I don't really know what I want. Like, Compo's life is pretty tragic, a bit like Steptoe's life. But you never see that. You never see him sort of sat on his own, despairing at his life. I don't think I want that, really. But I do disagree with you that it feels grounded. I think it feels cartoonish. I think it feels like a big performance. And again, that's not to say it's terrible. But I don't feel like he's walking that line in the same way that Wilfred Bramble did.
Okay,
we
fair
disagree.
Enough.
That's all right.
Agree to disagree.
Well, I think that's Peter Sallis and Bill Owen we've covered. As I said, we'll probably cover those in a bit more detail because we will return to Home Firth at some point. Actually, shall we? Before we finish the first half of this episode, can we talk a little bit about Home Firth? Because I said earlier, I think Home Firth is a character in this drama. We see a lot of it, and it's beautiful, isn't it? It's very pretty. What do you know of Home Firth?
Yeah, a little town on the practically on the Pennines, right? It's right on the outskirts.
Yeah, it's on the edge of the
Yorkshire.
Yeah, well, I live quite close to Home Firth now. I moved to this side of Yorkshire last year, and Home Firth is, like it said, it's posh, it's fancy Yorkshire, a bit like Harrogate. Do you know what I mean? It's like fancy Yorkshire, but that's not right. That's in 1996. And you know, I'm comparing it, like, we grew up in like the coal mining heartlands of West Yorkshire, you know, Barnsley, that sort of area. And so Home Firth was proper fancy compared to that. When I was a kid in the 80s, the pits had not long closed, and we were in that sort of post-industrial decline. Like, our dad wasn't a miner specifically, but the whole area was depressed, you know, financially, economically depressed. And so this lovely rural town over in the west, Home Firth, beautiful, you know, and it's got this thriving tourist industry, not no small part thanks to Last of the Summer Wine. So in 1973, that tourist industry wasn't there. In 1973, the place where we lived in Barnsley, the mining heartlands were still economic powerhouses. They're not necessarily thriving in the way they'd been earlier, but they were still economically healthy areas. Whereas Home Firth was not. Home Firth was past its prime. It was past that industrial peak. So whereas we had coal mining, Home Firth, that home valley, their industry was wool and textiles. And so that, like, in the late 18th century, early 19th century, it was one of the first areas, well, in the world, really, that the Industrial Revolution kicked in. They had lots of local sheep. The river there provided water power for mills before steam, and obviously a way of transporting the cloth out of there as well. So you had towns like Dewsbury, Huddersfield, Halifax, even Leeds, which, you know, some of those towns now are pretty run down, but they were the Dubai of their day. You know, they were the happening places in the world. I mean, that's not really a joke. They really were. You know, they were
boom towns, right?
If you walk around Huddersfield, it's a bit run down. Like, it's not the nicest of places. But if you look up above ground floor, the architecture is absolutely beautiful. And it's from that period where there was so much money in those towns, and they were just building these beautiful public buildings. Well, Home Firth was thriving.
Well, I think it's, like you're saying, it's interesting that this this show and the fact that it's set in Home Firth that's relevant because
totally.
These men are redundant. It's like this is a redundant town with redundant people. Like they have nothing to do. And we even see them in one episode. They're walking around a textile mill that's obviously just been abandoned, and there's like glass on the floor and all that sort of thing.
Exactly right. Have you got a clip of that? Because that's a perfect encapsulation of this what I'm talking about. This phenomenon.
Have a little look.
Why, there's got to be something stronger than the unions.
How can anybody believe in miracles?
It's very popular. You want to listen to the workers formulating a few demands?
I know why he believes. He's convinced that God's a Tory. Hey, if God comes in overalls, there'll be some sulky faces in church.
I still say that he's scared to go near a church.
So yeah, that is sort of plot relevant. They're talking about.
They're still talking about God, yeah. But they're walking around this derelict mill, and those mills now are beautiful. They've all been redeveloped. They're all office buildings. They're gorgeous. But whereas 100 years earlier they were thriving centres of industry, but there's this period
and providing jobs for everyone.
Exactly. This period in the 70s where they're literally derelict. Like so, in the 20th century, the West Yorkshire Home Valley kind of lost its status because there were just more global competitors, but it was still operating. It was really only after the Second World War that cheaper imports just made it not viable to have that textile industry there. And what's interesting to me is if you look at like the pits, there was the miners' strike, and then like that sort of moment in time where that industry just came to a halt, and the area was decimated. There's not really a hard stop in quite the same way. It was just a decline in the textile industry, but gradually it has the same effect. So in 1973, what we see here is a beautiful setting, but a post-industrial town with little prospects and a working class identity. It's not fancy yet.
Yeah.
There's no last of the summer wine tourism.
Yeah. And I did a bit of research into Home Firth as well, actually, and I found there's this company called Blamire who they were a photographer studio, and then they made films, but like in the very early kind of 1890s film development way. Now this is very much an area
history degree at work again.
It is. It's very much an area of interest for me. I did acknowledge that. This is even too much of a tangent, even for us. So I'm not going to go into it. But what I found very interesting was a specific sort of little run of films that this company made in Home Firth. And they had a character called Winky. So this is 1914, right? And so it's kind of silent comedy, very nonsense, silly comedy. And this character Winky, who was played by like a music hall star. And it's just all this very visual, silly comedy, right? Now, I'm just going to show you a clip because this is an
absolute kick in the swingers to our listeners. We're going to play a silent film. Is that what you're proposing? I know we've gone visual, but come on.
We've gone visual. We've got to embrace it. I apologize to your audio. I'll talk over it. But I accept this is a major tangent, but I want to show this because just imagine if Winky is Compo, right? And that this is an episode of Last of Some Wine, because I think it would fit in perfectly. And I just find it interesting that this is a part of Home Firth history. So here we go. So we have Winky here. He's wearing a bear suit. He's got a full-on like bear costume. And he's outside the pub. He's like, oh, yes, I'm going to go inside the pub. The barmaid sees him. Oh, my gosh, it's a bear. She runs away. And there's some patrons here. They're having a beer. They are terrified by the bear. They run away. And that leaves good old Winky. He's got the beer and he just knocks the pints down. He's scared everyone out of the pub.
That is good stuff.
And then we're just going to have a quick close-up of him here. And just imagine this is Bill Owen doing this as Compo, just gurning at camera, giving him a wink, and then just helping himself to booze from the thing.
Yeah, so it's just spot on, mate. That's 1914. That's really good quality, isn't it? The film, that's really good quality. I'm so again, listeners, I'm really sorry. We'll move on in a sec.
That's held by the Yorkshire Film Archive. I didn't even know that existed, but there we go.
That's really
so.
That's genuinely interesting. Listen, don't grumble about a tangent, listeners and viewers. Indeed, no, we are all about the tangents.
It was so specifically Last of the Summer Wine.
If I'm saying Home Firth is a character in this drama, then we have to talk about what Home Firth's done before. There we go. Done.
Yeah, there we go.
Actually, Joe, I think we should wrap up this first half of the episode. So thanks very much for listening and watching, and we will be back next week to finish up this episode of Last of the Summer Wine, and we'll be talking a lot more about Michael Bates as well. In the meantime, if you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Instagram at BritCompod, or you can find us on Facebook if you just search for British Sitcom History Podcast. Alan, tell them about the YouTube.
So YouTube, yeah, I mean, if you search for British Sitcom History, you will find it, and it has all our archive of material, which is primarily audio, but we put some visuals on it, and now we've gone video. So YouTube is the place to be to watch the actual video of us talking and all the clips that we're just describing and everything like that. And now that we're on this new journey, we're producing more episodes, much more content, and so we need your support. If you would like to help us financially, you can go to patreon.com/BritCompod and support us for as little as £5 a month, just because we're having to put a lot more time and effort
like
into
and subscribe.
Produce more people, more episodes. So help us get more sitcom content out there. And thank you very much for all those who have supported.
Thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week, and we will be back to Home Firth. See you all then. Bye.
Bye.